the first thing Admiral Varath 7 noticed was the silence on the human's face. Not the silence of fear, not the silence of defeat. The human commander was standing at the viewport of the captured transport vessel, watching the Dominion's 1,200-ship fleet arrange itself across the Orion threshold like a wall of gods, and her expression was still, not frozen, not suppressed, still, the way a deep ocean is still above something enormous moving underneath it. Varath 7 had executed 43 species into submission. He knew every expression fear created in bipedal carbon-based life. He did not know this one. He should have asked what it meant. He made a note to ask later. He did not get the chance. 3 weeks before the stars began going dark, the Dominion Hegemony's Strategic Command received the human response to their ultimatum. The ultimatum itself had been generous, by Dominion standards. Surrender your outer colonies, disband your military infrastructure, accept permanent trade tariffs calibrated to ensure your civilization could never again threaten Dominion economic primacy, and no inhabited human world would be targeted. The response arrived not as a transmission, but as a physical object. A courier drone, human-manufactured, was intercepted at the edge of the Kepler buffer zone. Inside it, there was no data chip, no recorded message, no diplomatic encoding. There was a single sheet of material the Dominion's analysts spent 6 hours identifying as *paper*, an organic fibrous medium used by exactly 0 spacefaring civilizations in the current galactic era, because it was laughably primitive. On the paper, in ink, were 3 words in standard galactic script. "We'll be ready." The Strategic Command reviewed the 3 words for 11 minutes before someone laughed. Then most of the room laughed. Then someone pointed out that humanity's total fleet strength numbered approximately 412 vessels, many of them refitted cargo transports and mining platforms armed with weapons that Dominion engineers classified as historically notable. And the laughter lasted considerably longer. What nobody in that room asked, what nobody thought to ask was, ready for what? That question would define the next 4 months of galactic history. The second thing that should have been noticed happened 8 days before the fleet launched. A xenosociologist named Prethdar, attached to Dominion Intelligence's Human Behavioral Modeling Division, submitted a report flagged Priority Secondary, which meant it would be reviewed within 30 days by someone at the mid-administrative level. Prethdar had spent 11 years studying humanity. Her report was 47 pages long. Its executive summary was 1 paragraph. The paragraph read, "Human civilizations throughout their recorded history have demonstrated a consistent and statistically significant behavioral anomaly. They perform worse under laboratory conditions than under genuine existential threat. Every model we use to predict their military response capability is derived from peacetime data. We have no reliable model for what humans become when they believe they are fighting for survival. We should not assume we know." The report was reviewed on schedule 29 days later by an administrator named Jev Torath, who had 3 other reports to read that afternoon. He noted Prethdar's recommendation to delay the fleet launch pending further behavioral analysis. He marked it considered insufficient basis for command escalation. Prethdar's office was in the lower levels of the Intelligence Directorate. She heard about the fleet launch the same way everyone else did. She did not sleep that night. The 3 words on the paper kept cycling through her mind. "We'll be ready." Not "we are ready." Not "we refuse *, not "we will fight." The future tense carried something she couldn't name, a specificity, as if the humans already knew exactly what was coming and had already begun preparing for something that hadn't happened yet. She pulled her research files and started reading from the beginning. The Dominion fleet crossed the human border at the Meridian Transit Point on a Tuesday. Not that the Dominion observed human weekdays, but the battle logs would later note it, because the humans apparently considered this significant. 1,240 warships. the largest military force assembled in the Dominion's 400-year history. Fleet Admiral Varath VII commanding. The first engagement lasted 9 minutes. Humanity's forward defense line consisted of 63 vessels positioned at the transit point. 63 against 1,240. The mathematics were not mathematics, they were theater, and everyone in both fleets understood this. The Dominion's forward elements moved to engage, expecting the human ships to either retreat or issue a last-stand transmission that could be broadcast later for historical records. The human ships did neither. "They're not moving," reported Tactical Officer Sainra from the flagship's forward console. A pause. "Admiral, they're not moving, but they're also not returning fire." Varath VII leaned forward. "Communication status." "Their channels are open, sir. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, but it's not speech. It's—" Sainra paused with the particular quality of confusion that Varath VII had learned over 43 campaigns meant something unprecedented was occurring. "It's music, sir." The bridge went quiet. Everyone could hear it now through the opened comm channel, human music, something with deep resonant strings and a rhythm that moved like breathing, neither frantic nor mournful. Something else underneath it, a low structural pulse that Varath VII felt more than heard. "Are they drugged?" asked his second, Admiral companion Rathvel. "Some species use chemical sedation before." "Scans show normal biology," Sainra said. "Elevated stress hormones, but within combat parameters. They appear to be—" Another pause. "Awake and calm, sir." 63 ships playing music at 1,240 warships. Not retreating, not firing. "Destroy them," Varath VII said. The forward human line disappeared in 90 seconds. 63 ships, gone. 1,240 moved on. What Varath VII wrote in his log that night: human forward defense ineffective. Resistance at meridian minimal. Expect standard attrition pattern. What he did not write because he could not articulate it. The music had not stopped playing until the last ship was destroyed, and in the final 6 seconds as the last vessel broke apart, a single human voice had come over the channel, not screaming, not praying, not issuing a final defiant transmission. Just counting, calmly, backward from 10. It reached 4 before the signal died. He did not know what the countdown was for. He would learn. Prethdar's security clearance was not sufficient to access live fleet telemetry. What she had access to were the after-action reports that filtered down to intelligence within 48 hours of each engagement. She read them the same way she'd been reading everything about humans for 11 years, not looking for what the reports said, but looking for what they didn't say. The first report mentioned the music, classified it as a psychological operation, purpose unclear. She wrote in her personal notes, not psychological operation, ritual. Humans ritually mark transitions between states of being. The music was a threshold ceremony. They were crossing from one state to another. The question is, which state were they entering? She pulled historical records. Human military history was the longest continuous record of organized violence in any known civilization's archives, approximately 12,000 years of documented warfare. She had read most of it. She knew things about human conflict that no Dominion military strategist had thought to consider, because military strategists were not xenosociologists. One pattern appeared in every human large-scale conflict across all 12,000 years, without exception, in every culture, on every continent, in every era. When humans faced overwhelming force, they didn't optimize. They simplified. Every sophisticated human military structure, when pressed past a certain threshold, collapsed into something older, leaner, and far more difficult to fight, because it stopped following the logic that conventional military doctrine assumed enemies would follow. It stopped trying to win battles. It started trying to survive long enough to make the cost of winning unbearable for the other side. The Dominion was about to fight 1,200 years of industrial-age human military doctrine. They had no idea there were 11,000 years of something older underneath it, waiting. Prethdar started writing a new report. She wrote it faster than she'd ever written anything. She knew, with the specific dread of someone watching a mechanism move toward its inevitable endpoint, that no one would read it in time. The second engagement happened at Kepler Station, a human logistics hub orbiting a dead star 40 light minutes inside their border. The Dominion expected fortified defensive platforms. They found the station intact, fully powered, and completely evacuated. Except for one human. A maintenance engineer, according to his identification, Jonas Merrick, age 41, citizen of the Kepler Administrative District. He was sitting in the station's operations center when the Dominion boarding party arrived. He appeared to be eating a meal, something warm in a metal container. He looked up at the 12 armed Dominion soldiers who had entered his operations center and said, in clear standard Galactic, "You guys want some? It's going to go to waste either way." The boarding party commander, a tactical sub-prefect named Gathrol, reported this interaction verbatim because he did not know what else to do with it. He asked Merrick where the station's crew had gone. Merrick considered this. "Home," he said. "Home. Most of them, the ones who had somewhere to go." "And you?" Merrick looked at him with an expression Gathrol could not classify. "I am *home," he said. "This is my station." They took him into custody. The station was searched, documented, and prepared for Dominion occupation. It yielded 4 months of logistics data, shipping manifests, supply routes, defensive coordinates, that Strategic Command celebrated as a significant intelligence gain. Analysts spent 3 days processing it. On the 4th day, someone noticed all the coordinates matched positions that were no longer there. Every supply depot, every defense installation, every logistics node listed in the Kepler station records had been evacuated between 2 days and 6 hours before the Dominion fleet crossed the border. The humans had known the Dominion was coming before the fleet launched. They'd had time to move everything. They'd left behind exactly one thing: a man with a warm meal and a database full of information about positions that were now empty. "They used us," said Rathvel, reviewing the report aboard the flagship. "They let us take their station. They wanted us to think we'd captured something valuable." "Why?" Verith7 asked. Neither of them had an answer. They moved on. The fleet was 1,200 ships. The intelligence setback was a delay, nothing more. The humans' actual fleet, 400 vessels, had not engaged in force. The Dominion military logic said, "They are running. The decisive engagement will come at their core systems. We will catch them there." That was the third misinterpretation. It would not be the last. Jonas Merrick spent 19 days in Dominion custody aboard a detention vessel in the rear echelon of the fleet. He ate what they gave him. He slept regular hours. He was asked, repeatedly and with increasing technological assistance, what he knew about human military strategy. He told them each time the same thing: "I'm a maintenance engineer. I kept the water recyclers running." On the 20th day, he was moved to a holding facility on a captured asteroid station at the edge of the Meridian Buffer. He walked from the transport vessel to his new cell calmly. He thanked the guard who showed him where the washroom was. The guard, a young soldier named Kethvar who had been stationed at the asteroid facility for 3 months and had never seen actual combat, mentioned this in a letter to his family. "The human prisoner is strange," he wrote. "Not frightened, not performing bravery, just present, like someone sitting in a waiting room for an appointment he already knows will arrive." The letter never made it home. Communications from rear echelon stations had become unreliable 8 days earlier, and nobody had explained why. Nobody in the rear echelon knew that the stars had started going out. The first star, not a star, but the next thing to it in practical military terms, a Dominion relay beacon network node that coordinated communication across 40 light-years of territory, went offline at 300 Fleet Standard Time, 41 days into the campaign. The duty officer marked it as a technical fault. The second node went offline 6 hours later. A different technician marked it as a possible cascade failure. The third, fourth, and fifth went offline simultaneously, 18 hours after that. By the time Strategic Command acknowledged the pattern, 17 communication nodes had gone dark, and the fleet's ability to coordinate with Dominion home territory had degraded to a 14-hour transmission delay. 1,200 ships in human space and their communications home were running through 3 remaining nodes that suddenly seemed very fragile. How? Verath 7 demanded of his technical staff. Our relay nodes are armored, redundant, self-repairing. What could? His chief engineer, Tarvas, looked deeply uncomfortable. We're still analyzing the first 3 nodes, Admiral. Initial assessment suggests they weren't destroyed. Then what happened to them? They appear to have been disassembled, methodically, from the inside. Silence. The inside, Verath 7 repeated. The internal maintenance access points were used. Whoever did this had detailed knowledge of the node architecture and sufficient time to work without triggering automated defense responses. Tarvas paused. Sir, our relay nodes have been in their positions for years. During that time, standard Dominion protocol allows for contracted exterior maintenance during the node's registered service windows, using certified. Human space, Verath 7 said. He heard his own voice as if it belonged to someone else. The maintenance contracts in human space were held by human engineering firms, sir. Yes, for 11 years. 11 years. The words hit the bridge like a physical weight. Prethdar's report had said 11 years. 11 years was how long her division had been studying humanity. It was, apparently, also how long humanity had been doing something else entirely inside Dominion communication infrastructure. They weren't targets, Rathvel said very quietly. The maintenance contracts, they were never. They had never been a coincidence. They had never been merely commercial. Humanity had spent 11 years learning the interior architecture of Dominion communication relay nodes, and they had waited. They had waited until the largest fleet in Dominion history was deep inside human space, and then the people who knew exactly how those nodes worked had gone home, and then they had. What does Jonas Merrick's personnel file classify him as? Verath 7 asked. His voice was very controlled. Sainra checked again. Maintenance engineer, sir. What kind of maintenance engineer? The pause lasted 4 seconds. Communications infrastructure, sir. Certified Dominion-grade relay systems. Active certification for 11. Sainra stopped speaking. Get him on a ship, Verath 7 said. Get him to me now. The message went to the asteroid facility via their remaining nodes. The reply came back 14 hours later. Jonas Merrick's cell was empty. He had thanked the guard who brought his morning meal, eaten it, and somewhere in the next 4 hours between 2 routine head counts, ceased to exist. The guard, Kethvar, when questioned, said, he seemed like he was waiting for something. I thought he was just patient. He had been waiting. He had been specifically waiting, for the moment his particular job was done, and the next part of a plan that had been moving for 11 years entered its next phase. The fleet was 1,200 ships. It still seemed like an unanswerable force, but the fleet could no longer talk to home in real time, and somewhere in human space, something the Dominion had never mapped because they'd never thought to look for it was becoming visible. Prethdar's new report reached exactly one person before the communication delays made internal Dominion intelligence traffic unreliable. A senior analyst named Cordveth who had, by coincidence or not, been her graduate supervisor 17 years earlier. He read it in 40 minutes, which was the fastest he had read anything in his career. Then he tried to forward it to Strategic Command and discovered the transmission delay had reached 16 hours. He flagged it Priority Absolute and sent it anyway. The report said, in its conclusion, 9 things. The 9th was the one that mattered. We have been counting the ships in the human fleet. We have not been counting the humans who are not on those ships. Humanity has a population of approximately 9 billion. Their registered military strength is 412 vessels crewed by approximately 60,000 personnel. 9 billion humans minus 60,000 is 8 billion. 940,000 people who are not in their military and who we have made no attempt to account for. We know what those 60,000 are doing. We have been watching them for 3 years. We do not know what the other 8 billion, 940,000 are doing. We have never asked. Commander Lyra Vasquez had not slept in 31 hours when the signal came through, and she considered this normal. She was sitting in a chair that had been bolted to the floor of a converted shipping container that had been welded to the interior of an asteroid that appeared, on every Dominion sensor system in the region, to be exactly what it looked like. An inert nickel iron rock in a standard eccentric orbit. The container held 12 people, 3 water recyclers, and enough compressed food to last 4 months. Lyra had been here for 2. We're getting confirmation on Node 7, said the technician beside her, a young woman named Dea who had been, before the war began, a network infrastructure specialist for a commercial telecommunications firm. Node 7 is dark. That's all 17, said the third person in their small section of the container, a man named Fenn who had, before the war, been nothing more remarkable than a high school physics teacher. He was currently running their communication relay from a system he had built himself from salvaged components and 3 years of intensive self-education. He looked at Lyra. Phase 1 is complete, Commander. Lyra was quiet for a moment. 31 hours without sleep. 2 months in a converted shipping container inside an asteroid. She was 44 years old. She had a daughter in a shelter somewhere in the Callisto system who was 12, and Lyra had not spoken to her in 2 months because communications were dark by design. Does Fleet Admiral Chen know? She asked. The confirmation went to the whole network, Dea said. Wherever Chen is, yes. Lyra nodded. She picked up a water container, drank from it, set it down. How long until they figure out what we actually did? Fenn asked. Weeks, Lyra said. Maybe if they're good. She paused. Then they'll realize what's coming. And then... She looked at him. Then they'll really want us to stop. Fenn waited. But by then, she said, we'll have already started Phase 2. The Dominion fleet encountered the main human force at the edge of the Sol system. 378 ships arranged in a pattern that Dominion tactical analysis could not immediately classify. The ships were not in a defensive formation. They were not staged for attack. They were arranged in something that looked, if a Dominion tactical officer allowed themselves a moment of disorientation, like a door frame. Varath 7 studied the formation for 11 minutes. They're inviting us in, Rathvel said. That's what it looks like, Varath 7 agreed. He did not say what he was thinking, which was, the last time we accepted a human invitation, we lost 17 communication nodes and a prisoner we didn't know mattered. What's behind them? Full scan. The Sol system, sir. Earth, Luna, the standard configuration, nothing unusual. Sainra paused. Although what? The gravitational readings are slightly irregular around Earth's L4 and L5 Lagrange points. Could be sensor interference. Could be what? Mass, sir, something's there. It's not showing on optical, but the gravity signature. Sainra's hands moved across the console. It's large, sir. It's very large. 1,200 ships. Varath 7 felt, for the first time in a career spanning 43 campaigns, a specific quality of uncertainty that he did not have a word for in his native language. He used the human word for it because Dominion intelligence had included human linguistic resources in his command briefing. The human word was *dread*. "Hail them," he said. "The human formation, open a channel." The channel opened. For a moment silence, then a voice, calm, female, without ceremony. "Admiral Verath 7, the voice said, "we were expecting you." "I am addressing Fleet Admiral Chen." "You are?" "Admiral Chen, you are facing 1,200 Dominion warships. Your force is outnumbered more than 3 to 1. I am prepared to offer you the terms of the original ultimatum if you surrender your fleet now and stand down your irregular." "I'm going to stop you there," Chen said, "because I think there's some confusion about what's happening right now, and I'd rather address it directly before we waste each other's time." Silence on the bridge. Verath 7 waited. "You came here with 1,200 ships," Chen said. "You've been in our space for 41 days. I want to ask you something, Admiral, and I want you to think carefully before you answer. In those 41 days, has everything happened the way you expected it to?" Verath 7 said nothing. "The stations you captured were empty," Chen continued. Her voice was the voice of someone reading from a document they had memorized. "The intelligence you gathered was outdated. Your communication infrastructure inside our space is gone. Your rear echelon can't talk to home without a 16-hour delay. Your passenger, the man you thought was a frightened maintenance worker, is gone. And right now, you're looking at my ships and trying to figure out what the gravity readings at the Lagrange points mean." A pause. "You've been in our space for 41 days, Admiral. The question I'm asking is, do you think you've been fighting us?" Verath 7's hand tightened on the edge of his console. "Because you haven't been," Chen said. "You've been fighting our opening." The thing at the Lagrange points had been 11 years in construction. Not continuously. Humans were not a unified government with centralized project planning and unlimited industrial capacity. They were a fractious, disorganized, frequently self-contradictory civilization with 17 major governing bodies that disagreed on nearly everything. They had agreed on this. The precise scope of what humanity had built at the Lagrange points would not be fully understood by Dominion analysts for several months, during which time their understanding would be wrong in 4 sequential and increasingly alarming ways. But the functional description was this: humanity had not been building a weapon. They had been building a *position*. The Dominion's relay network was dark, which meant that 1,200 ships were cut off from home territory in real time, which meant that whatever happened in the Sol system in the next hours could not be immediately communicated to anyone, which meant, specifically, that strategic command could not transmit orders, could not redirect the fleet, could not make command decisions. The only command authority in range of the fleet was Verath 7. He made a decision. "All ships," he said, "attack formation, we end this now." 1,200 ships moved toward 378. The human formation didn't break. It bent outward, sideways, wrapping around the edges of the Dominion advance like a hand closing. And from the Lagrange points, from the impossible mass of things that weren't showing on optical sensors, the rest of the human plan revealed itself. Not ships. Platforms. Mining platforms, ore processing platforms, habitat platforms, cargo platforms, and things that were none of those but had been built to look like them. A civilian infrastructure fleet numbering 8,000 vessels that had been modified, quietly, over 11 years, by 8 billion people who were not in the registered human military, using knowledge they had gathered while maintaining Dominion communication infrastructure, in orbits that the Dominion had mapped once and never re-examined. 8,000 platforms, armed not with military-grade weapons. They didn't have military-grade weapons. Armed with mining lasers and mass drivers, and the kind of improvised systems that a physics teacher builds from salvaged components and 3 years of intensive self-education, multiplied by 8 billion people who had all been asked to do one specific thing. Not win the battle. Make it impossible for the battle to end on Dominion terms. Lyra heard the engagement begin through Fenn's improvised relay. She couldn't see it. She was still inside the asteroid, still in the converted shipping container, still 33 hours without sleep. She listened to the communication fragments and built the picture in her mind. Dea was crying quietly, not from fear. "We should have been there," Dea said. "We were there." Lyra said, "We've been there for 11 years. Fenn was monitoring the relay frequencies. He went still. "Commander," he said. She looked at him. "The Dominion flagship is hailing Chen directly. Private channel, there." He paused. "They're asking for terms." The room was very quiet. Lyra thought about her daughter, 12 years old in a shelter on Callisto in the dark, with the careful and specific faith of someone who had been told, "I'm coming back. I don't know when, but I'm coming back." She thought about the 63 ships at the Meridian Transit Point playing music, counting backward from 10. She thought about Jonas Merrick eating his meal in the operations center of his station, waiting with the patience of someone who had spent 11 years learning exactly what needed to be learned. "What terms?" she asked. Fenn read. He read for a long time. Then he looked up. "They want safe passage out of human space for all 1,200 ships. They'll withdraw. They'll recognize human sovereignty. He stopped. "Chen's going to accept, isn't she?" It wasn't a question. Lyra was quiet for a long moment. "They came in with 1,200 ships," she said. "They'll leave with 1,200 ships. They're people alive. Our people." She didn't finish that sentence. "The 63 at Meridian didn't come home. But they'll leave knowing they had 1,200 ships and they couldn't win. And we had 400 ships and 8 billion people who spent 11 years deciding what mattered more than safety." She paused. "That's not a military victory." "What is it?" She picked up her water container, drank from it. "It's an argument," she said. "It's an argument that will never need to be made again." Fleet Admiral Verath 7 issued the withdrawal order at 1847 Fleet Standard Time. 1,200 ships turned. 1,200 ships left human space through the Meridian Transit Point, which 378 warships and 8,000 civilian platforms held open like a door, and nobody fired. He spent the first 4 hours of the journey home writing his report. He spent the next 8 hours staring at what he had written and finding it inadequate. He kept coming back to one specific problem. He could describe what had happened, but he could not describe why it had been possible. The reasons were not tactical. The reasons were not technological. The humans did not have superior weapons or superior ships or superior numbers or superior strategy in any conventional sense. What they had was... He stopped writing. He thought of Chen's voice. "You've been fighting our opening." He thought of Jonas Merrick, eating his meal, waiting. He thought of 63 ships, playing music, counting down from 10. He thought of Prethdar's report, which had finally reached him through the last operational communication node 2 days after the withdrawal began. He had read it in one sitting. He had read it again. One line had not left him. Human civilizations do not perform better under existential threat because they become more effective. They perform better because they become more unified in ways no external observer can model, because the unification does not occur in their governments or their militaries or their institutions. It occurs in individual human beings who decide, separately and without coordination, that there is something they are unwilling to lose. We cannot model 8 billion separate decisions. We cannot predict what a species will do when every member of it, simultaneously and individually, decides the same thing is worth more than their own survival. What we can observe in retrospect is what humans built, not the platforms, not the weapons, not the communication networks. Those are all manifestations. What humans built over 11 years was an answer to a question they knew was coming. The question was, how much are you willing to lose? The answer, which took 11 years to construct and 41 days to demonstrate, was, everything except the thing we decided matters. We do not know what that thing is. We have been studying humans for 11 years, and we do not know what humans consider worth more than survival. I believe that is the most important thing. We don't know about them. He closed the report. He looked at the viewport. Human space was behind them. Ahead was the long transit home, 16 hours of communication delay slowly collapsing as they re-entered Dominion relay range. He would file his report. There would be hearings. There would be commissions. There would be voices arguing for a second campaign with a larger fleet, better intelligence, better preparation. He would not be one of those voices. Because he had seen Lyra Chen's face in the transmission during the negotiations, briefly, before she realized her camera was on. She had been looking at something off-screen, something she was thinking about, and he had seen on her face the same expression he had noticed on the prisoner's face, the same expression he had not had a word for. He had a word for it now. He had been wrong to call it stillness. It was not stillness. Stillness was the absence of motion. What he had seen on those human faces was the opposite. It was motion at such depth that none of it showed on the surface. It was the expression of someone who had already moved through every possibility in their mind, already imagined the loss, already accepted it, already chosen to continue anyway, and come out the other side into a place where nothing could reach them anymore, because they had already given it all up. He had no word for this in his language. He suspected this was because his species had never needed one. The word humans used was resolve asterisk, but that wasn't it either. That was too soft. What he had seen was something harder, something that had no name because it existed past the point where nomming things was still useful. He thought about coming back with a larger fleet. He ran the calculation honestly, without the support of Strategic Command's preferred models. The answer was the same. It would always be the same. Because the Dominion's largest possible fleet was a number, and what humans had shown him, over 41 days and 11 years of invisible preparation, was that they were not a number. They were the species that would build 8,000 platforms in secret while maintaining your infrastructure with a smile and wait, and count down from 10. And when you finally came with everything you had, they would open a door for you and let you walk through. And what you would find on the other side was not a battle. It was the answer to a question you hadn't known you were asking. How do you fight something that has already decided to outlast you? You don't. You turn your 1,200 ships around. You fly home through silence where your relay nodes used to be. You write a report that will not capture what actually happened. And you hope, with every rational instinct your species possesses, that humanity decides the argument has already been made. Because if they decide it hasn't, if they decide there is still something worth more than peace, you won't see it coming. You never do. The stars behind the fleet burned steadily in the dark, one by one resuming their slow and ancient light as the Dominion withdrew and human engineering teams, in ships that never appeared on any Dominion sensor because the Dominion had never thought to look for ships that small, began the patient, methodical work of restoring what they had taken down. Somewhere in that dark, in an asteroid that looked like nothing, a woman who hadn't slept in 36 hours finally closed her eyes. On Callisto, a 12-year-old girl who had been told "I'm coming back" felt something shift. Not the communication signal, not yet, but something quieter and more fundamental, the way weather changes before you can see the clouds. And across the galaxy, in a room on Dominion Prime where a xenosociologist had not yet received word that the fleet was coming home, Prethdar sat alone with her 11 years of research and a question she had never managed to answer. She had studied humanity longer than almost anyone. She had read 12,000 years of their history. She understood their rituals, their biology, their social structures, their economic patterns, their capacity for both cruelty and extraordinary tenderness. And she still did not know what they considered worth more than survival. She was beginning to suspect that was not a gap in her research. She was